And for me, sales is not an easy life. It needs to be adapting every day. It needs to be changing. You need to be, strategizing. You need to be thinking about how am I going to bring on online sales, or, how am I going to start to become, how is a part of my revenue if you are a new construction company, you're a man who's just gone from it, from like my job quote, or, something like this. How do I get to that level?
Welcome to today's episode of the Build Smart Blueprint. Today we're joined by Ben Hutchings-Mitchell, Senior Partnerships Manager at Snowick, a family-run maintenance company with over 20 years in the industry. Ben brings a unique blend of entrepreneurial experience and sales acumen. I'm going to let him talk about his background because it's super interesting. And then we'll go on to talking about sales, which I think is really overlooked and really underemphasized in the industry. So Ben, I'd really like you to just give us some insight into your background and how it kind of shaped you to be more focused on sales.
Cheers, Arthur, and thank you very much for the introduction. Much appreciated. So my background started many years ago. I grew up in a working class household. Apart from, should we say, my granddad, who was an inventor of warplanes, like tornadoes and things. He's the CEO of Engineering Dynamics. So I've always seen somebody, should I say, hitting the targets and hitting their dreams, whilst also being brought up in a very, very working class lifestyle. And, this person couldn't read or write, wasn't the great at presenting, but he had a product, and this product was very useful. And I learned from a very young age, say below 10, that if you have something that somebody wants, people will do what they can to get it. And I really found this is a common trend with everything, and I find this is just amplified by social media nowadays, and can be used in near enough all industries, should we say. But if we're going to focus today on just property, I was a owner of a maintenance company, Titan Install. We were doing very, very well. COVID had a big influence on us, closing, should I say. We were looking after, 45 plus care homes, 20 of the top 10 estate agents, pretty typical. But on paper, that sounds really, glamorous to certain things. And, then I started to do projects with Cyril McAlpine, ISG, Overbury, so many of the top 10, looking at fit outs and that sort of, projects, ranging between, 5 million to a £600 plumbing job. We tried to get the whole scope of sales. And from then, I was also the owner of a performing arts school, Blue Performing Arts, where, I won, we won things like fastest growing school in the UK, things like this. And I really had a passion for, finding things that people were not happy with and then working out how I could put my touch on it. So whether that be through childcare, seeing the huge childcare prices and realizing that I could do it at 20% cheaper as an independent limited company, rather than as a big 45, team of stakeholders, investors. Once you get to their levels, you have to kind of bump the prices up. But when I was trying to keep down to, a couple of key managers and directors, I realized I could keep the prices low. So, we managed to grow from, 30 kids in 1 month to 900 month 3. So it literally went absolutely crazy. We had 3 schools around London. It was amazing. But then I realized as you get older, you become a dad or whatever it is. And I needed something a bit more, should I say, structured that would allow me to spend more time with my daughter. So I went into property. And from doing this, I found, being completely honest, I found it exactly the same as dealing with the parents, because most people that work in these places are parents. And I find that the same things, how they treat their house, their car, their watch, is the same way they treat their children. And I find there's a clear correlation of people wanting the same thing. So whether that be, you're going to look after my child, you're going to look after my house, you're going to charge me a decent rate for what you're doing, and my shoulders are going to come out of a new skill, or my house is going to come out beautiful afterwards. And I found that these were very similar business models to follow with sales structure, and that's the reason why I kind of took the leap. Having now worked at Snowek for a period of time, they've been going for 20 years. Beautiful directors, family run, loads of family members in the office. So it's great to see, which is, being completely honest, uncommon to see nowadays, I say, in London, with how competitive it is. Family businesses still staying as a family rather than, just going for the check, should we say. But then doing so, I find a lot of companies that are in that sort of age bracket, they lose the raw qualities of sales and the basics that probably got them there in the first place. I find a lot of people are trying to chase loads and loads of new customers just to keep the stats up, rather than actually build on retention and how to grow within a company, whether that be, that could be done through many ways, but whether that be through, cutting back on some profits to forecast for future, whether that be sometimes going the extra mile, extending a radius, or whether that be, trying to grow your product line or your service line to ensure that you are a one-stop shop for your client. Okay. And I really find that a lot of businesses and salespeople in general, I've kind of lost the touch of hitting the phones, should we say. Me as a senior, I will still send out 60 emails, do 60 calls, message at least 85 random influencers or whatever on Instagram every week. For the emails, that would be daily, calls, that would be daily. But for the, I will always make sure I'm reaching out to people like yourself, or to other people, or awards, or whatever it is, to try boost my brand name and also myself. Because, if you're a salesperson, people want to know that full trust with you. They're not going to give you £1 million, deal from the first conversation. They'll probably research you a little bit. They'll probably find out a little bit about what you've done. Have you done any experience in doing this before? Have you got the budget to complete this? There's loads of things that come into the aspects of taking on large amounts of work, and especially with trying to retain the customers, as I was mentioning. When you're retaining them, you also have to think about how much it's going to cost you to grow with this client. So I found, with my own business, I was growing rapidly. Okay, so the work orders are flying in. I was growing numbers of staff. I was doing all that correctly, but I wasn't taking into account the financial strain on growing itself. So, having to, as the UK is not really blessed with the greatest payment terms, as a lot of these estate agents, a lot of these block management companies pay on the 30-day, 45 days, and that's if you're lucky. So trying to grow daily, should we say, can become a challenge. So especially if you're a startup, I found that I was bringing in great numbers of sales, but then falling short on the production side to get the sales completed because of the budgets. So nowadays I try to focus on, don't want to say cheap way, but other long-term projects where I can forecast and then budget for, or I focus on quick turnarounds. And then that quick turnaround business I find to be your bread and butter, especially if you get the clients that do quick approvals. For example, you could try find a customer like a McDonald's, which is a one franchisee. Yeah, and you got to try get in with every single one individual, or you could try get in with a care home that has 50 homes. You could find the budget for one, work out how you can deal with that, with that section, and then ask them eventually, or try to worm your way in, or however possible, whether that be through price matching other competitors, whether that be through you inviting them to meals, offering them free webinars and training, seeing how they're forecasting their future maintenance works to see how they can reduce expenditure. There's so many ways that you can try to do this to try grow within that customer, and then your door is automatically opened to their other sections. Whereas I find a lot of people try to aim for customers where there's never going to be any repeat business. They're going to get you to come do something once, just like buying a pair of shoes. You're going to buy this lovely pair of shoes once. Are you going to buy that same pair of shoes again? Probably not. So, I find this is a big difference for me between B2B and private clients, because private clients, you could spend the same amount of time chasing them quotes, doing the appraisal, doing the reports, doing all these inspections things to still get the no. And with that no, there is no conclusive way of finding more work from that person. Whereas if you get rejected from, let's say, I don't know, Winkworth, for example, there's other people in there that will probably still need your services. There's other offices that will still need your services. Once you've completed a couple of projects for that company, you can then still shout about it to others. So you still hold that rep no matter what happens.
That's great. That's, we're talking there about potentially kind of when people get to a certain stage. A lot of our clients are reluctant to do the initial stages of outreach, and what I find happens is maybe they started their building company through referrals, and that they're kind of getting decent work, and then it becomes very up and down, but they still just don't want to hit the phones, like you said. What do you say to those people about what some first steps that they can take to start getting more consistent sales?
Okay, so I'll just reveal some secrets. Should we go for it? Yeah, let's reveal some selling secrets. Tactics that I've been using for 10 years that have never ever failed me. If you go onto your phone and you type in property manager, email, London, you will have a whole list of people ready for you at your disposal to contact. All you need is 2 meetings a week. Those 2 meetings could turn into 10 to 20 work orders, depending on how your trial works go. Yeah. And I find this a copy and paste job. Yeah. So, you have your typical email, which says, for me, which I do. Okay. Typical. Hi, my name's Ben. I hope you're well. Are you currently looking for new contractors? At the moment, we've been smashing these services across London for clients for this amount of time. I list the services, post a little testimonial, and I will copy and paste that 60 times a day to different clients. On average, I book about, 30 to 40 meetings a week. Not a week, a month. A month with seniors. So not with the receptionist. I'm not trying to get hold of any Tom, Dick and Harry. I'm trying to get hold of only senior property managers, block managers, or directors. Nobody else is important because nobody else can initiate you, onboard you, and that's all you really want to know. As you know, working with property managers, a lot of them are out on the road. So I do find sometimes if you're looking for seniors, the email is still the best solution over phone sometimes, because the odds of catching a busy senior who's trying to close a deal when he's free for that minute is very rare. Whereas if they are looking for new contractors, whether they're looking for people to tender, whatever it is, they would have been instructed to do so. So, they would have been told, this would have been a discussion in one of their meetings and their things saying, we're not happy with so-and-so, we need to replace them. And it's about finding those pockets. If the person does say no, that's not a no, that's a when. So when should I come back round to you? Should I pop in? Should I drop off some stuff? Do you like sweets? Do you like cookies? Okay. This is a simple thing that I always do. Once I get talking to you, can I drop off a bag of cookies to you? Might only cost you a tenner, but just that little thing there will, be rewarding. Or especially at times like this at Christmas, like just dropping in some Christmas cards just to say, it'd be great to work with you. There's loads of things like this that I find useful, but then also it's just about being reliable. If I could be completely honest, out of the 120 plus construction companies that I know, being completely honest, I reckon only 30% of them are really, really that reliable.
Yeah, this is true.
And this is based on speed, whether that be attending an emergency, quotation delivery time, price, and then also back office management. So, that would be reports, or that could be your accounts management team. Okay. I find even to this day in every business, they lose, 10 to 15% of business due to bad follow up. It's all good being really, really busy, dealing with loads and loads of issues, but unless those issues are accounting to a bottom line sale, it's just static actions. And I find a lot of businesses, you walk in there and still have their senior people, their senior whatever, dealing with these crazy problems without really understanding the value of what it's costing their time, and also the company, which is most importantly, sales. So I find, you always get, managers having to deal with, should we say the difficult clients and this sort of thing, where you have to find solutions for those clients because they're always going to be there, and they're always going to slow down your seniors, which means they're always going to slow down the production line and the quickness of your sales. So I find you have to, not so should say pass the buck, but pass it to people that are not generating the most money for your company. A lot of people will focus on, let's take an example here. I find it really hard on a daily, like if you're bringing in 30 to 50 work orders a day, or whether that be 200 work orders a day, there's a very thin line between what's more important. Is it booking the most jobs, or is it prioritizing the value? And I really find this is something that every business seems to struggle with. They'll be booking all these jobs and mapping out, booking themselves in, and then another job will come in, which is probably a higher value than something that they didn't want to do, or a job that was a bit difficult, a bit tricky customer doesn't like paying. And they push that aside and forget about the new sales. And I really find this a struggle, because people like to, also, as you probably know yourself, people like to work with the same people for a long period of time. So it's also hard to get in the door that way. And then, so once they are in the door, I find a lot of long-term construction companies throw these new guys away when it's been so hard to get these people in the door to become a 15-year client in the first place. So, it's all good prioritizing that your long retention, which is your bread and butter, but you have to remember that everything's changing. A bit like, ISG the other day. ISG closing was, a massive shock. People didn't think it was ever going to happen, probably. And a lot of companies probably wanted to be like ISG. And I find, people that are focused on, as I say, being honest, just working with some of them, focus more on the great product, the great service, the great management team, the great this, but they're not closing sales fast enough, you end up shutting. And unless you have that systematic contracts that come in, or your tenders or whatever that is, you're not going to be able to fight one of your customers closing. For example, about you said there, if you're a small businessman, living in London, team of 3, and you've been, stuck to this customer 15 years. Sorry, mate, I can't do that job because I've been prioritizing this customer. If something happens to that customer, how many customers have you let walk through the door? And I find, that a common factor across the whole kind of spectrum, should I say.
I mean, it's a real balance. And what do you think about kind of specializing and really knowing who your best client is, and how does that play into choosing, like, what do I do here? Do I please this guy or please this guy? What do I do?
So for me, I look at it from 3 factors. Yes, we all like talking to a customer, but it comes down to who pays first, who's always quick at paying, who's always quick at approving, and who offers the most opportunities. And I feel like once you've highlighted these 3 factors, and then you put them down, right on a piece of paper, put them down into a box, whose name keeps appearing, what company keeps appearing, how many recalls has this person called us over the year, how many, just, do you know what I mean? How many has this person done? You need to kind of tally it up. As much as A lot of tradespeople say, I don't really do stats, don't really do figures. You need to, um, especially if you're going to try and make this something you want to do for the rest of your life. You need to start to work out your trends, which are just simple bar charts. You can do them on paper. You ain't got to do them on computer, make them look pretty. But you need to start to see, month by month, how it goes. For example, so as you know, if you're a plumber, this time of year, super for you. If you're a gardener, super for you. But if you're a gardener in winter, what do you need to still keep that? You need some contracts. Which kind of industries can offer those sort of contracts? Well, people that don't ever shut. What are those? Those are care industries. There's people that are schools, cares.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you can literally
Yeah.
point. Your customers are telling you who needs you. It shouldn't be you thinking, oh, who do I want to work with? It should be kind of, oh, they need me. And I really feel like that's the issue.
What you mentioned briefly about follow-ups, and I have this often with our clients and people we speak to. Um, they've often got people in their pipeline when we really dig in, and they just haven't followed up with them. What do you say to someone like that? What can they do? Often they are pen and paper people, and we're trying to tell them, you need some sort of system. But what can they do to make sure that they don't let people slip through the net?
Okay, so when I was first starting, when we first got a bit too busy, where I was unable to use a laptop permanently, should I say, because dealing with issues, you need to, as bad as it sounds, you need to find some other part-time stuff. There's other ways of doing this. Being completely honest. So in the UK, we are very blessed with the pound, and you are able to hire foreign assistants way above their national wage to help you. So for me,
Yep.
myself, I had 5 people in the Philippines that were helping me. I had 2 people in Pakistan and 1 person in India. And they were my full-time staff. All the other people were engineers that were here. All the rest were abroad. Because as long as they got a basic CRM or even just a Google Drive that you will share, that you will fill in, you can do this. And you need one person every Tuesday between 12 to 3 and Thursday 12 to 3 just to follow up them emails. I feel like if it's a quote under £1,000, you should be following up the same day. If it's a quote over 2.5 grand, give it 48 hours and then follow it up every day. There is no reason for you to feel bad for following up. They have asked you to do something. You have supplied a price or what you can offer, so you deserve a response. And I feel like this is the
Yep.
mutual respect. Many people will just try to forget about you. I'm not going to answer the phone, not going to answer the phone. But when they eventually do, you might have won that sale. And for you not picking up the phone or re-emailing or got someone on a minimum wage or your little cousin, just to send out some emails for you or whatever it is, a family member, your girlfriend, get them to do that. Offer them 10%. Offer them a little commission. And just try to make sure you're following up, especially with big clients. I find as well, we won't follow them up, but they will chase us for everything. And I find that's a real thing across the whole of London, where we kind of say, have you received that quote? I'm just checking if we got approval. When they have an issue, it's, hi Arthur, I'm just wanting to call you to deal with this, and they expect you to answer every time. So I tried to build this relationship as well with the client. In the initial meetings, I tell them how long should I expect, because we do like to follow up. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday. So do expect an email from our accounts team. Same for invoices. And just so you're building up that thing where they know they're going to be contacted, but then also they feel comfortable enough to contact you for a service or an update as well. So, it has to be a two-way street of you being completely transparent on what you're offering, but then also to get them to be as transparent as well and get that kind of, this is a tricky landlord, I'm not sure what's happening, rather than just, I haven't heard anything, so you can start to build that, as you said earlier, the pipeline. What's coming next? Without following up, you don't have any idea. You're just waiting for someone to say, I approve, which is a very risky game.
So with those without the staff, right? Because I 100% agree with what you're saying. I also understand from owners' point of view, often sales is the last thing they want to give up. That they want to control the sales. In a way, I'm like that. You know, I know my messaging. I know what we do inside, outside, backwards. You know, what do you say to someone like that? And also, at what point and what do they need in place to start handing over more of the sales stuff?
So for me, you got to trust your team. You really do, and you have to do what you're best at. And if sales is not what you're best at, then you need to get assistance or you need training or whatever it is. Don't think it's just suddenly going to pop in your head and you're going to become a genius the next day. It doesn't work like that. I find a bit like yourself, Arthur. You know, you're great at your broadcasting, you're great at this stuff, and you know you're pushing what you're great at. And I feel like everyone who has their skills of what they're good at is what they should focus on, and then everything that you're not good at, you should outsource. And that doesn't always mean getting some super high salary person in. It's just getting them in to do what you need. Whereas I feel like as soon as someone started a startup, they start to make a little bit of money, they go, oh, I need full-time staff. And it's like, no, you don't need full-time staff. You need people to tick off the boxes that you can't tick. And then do it like this until you get to a point where it's impossible to not have a full-time staff member. And that's at the point you get one. And I find out this are growing as well. You know, I find people like to go, okay, you know, we're going to hit 20 million next year. We need to get 10 new staff members. Let's start recruiting. Let's start getting it ready without really knowing the growth. I prefer to hold the pressure of completing everything, but then expanding at the same time. So I'm not just throwing money away. You know, I find that, you know, construction companies throw tens of thousands, you know, of sales money out the window every year, whether that be through, you know, parking, whether that be through supplies, whether that be through unmanaged staff, whether that be through jobs not being booked correctly. And this is also just important as bringing in the business. And I feel like people like to focus on, you know, I see both as sales. So I find cutting back on expenditure the same as getting a new customer, because as long as the profit margin is going up, it's a sale. And I feel like these need to be in correlation with the two, and then also challenging your staff and other people to see why we are not hitting those sales, you know, because people get very comfortable very quickly, and people like an easy life. And for me, sales is not an easy life. It needs to be adapting every day. It needs to be changing. You need to be, you know, strategizing. You need to be thinking about how am I going to bring on online sales, or, you know, how am I going to start to become, you know, how is a part of my revenue if you are a new construction company, you know, you're a man who's just gone from like my job quote or, you know, something like this. How do I get to that level? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you need to strategize, work out how I'm going to start to have maybe an online booking system on my website, so that reduces my admin and it still allows me to make money. You might only be open Monday to Friday. Well, your website should allow you to start taking money on Saturdays and Sundays if you have a little ad spend or something like this.
How do you feel about kind of sales targets, commission? You mentioned commission just a moment ago. Are they good things? Can they work for you, against you?
For me, if you're in business, you know, it's a machine of individual talents, and individual talents need to reach a goal. And I find that that goal is always, you could say it's unfortunate, it's always down to, you know, the number at the end of the year. And I feel like, you know, if you are just working every day without a target, the health status of your business could be in lumber and you wouldn't even know. without these tracking of targets, KPIs, or whatever you want to call it. For me, you have to have a target to know where you're going, so you can sort of plan the future. Especially with sales, everyone, I'm hoping, or should do, have financial goals or dreams that they want to achieve in their own personal life. And the business is a great method and machine to achieving this, and having targets to where you're going, but also setting really realistic targets. So it's not like going, I've only got one customer, next year I'm going to hit the million. It's about really actually working out how you can do this. And I find a lot of people without a sales background find that they're looking into their ego. They're looking into their ego.
Yeah.
You're basically pumping yourself up because you're basically writing down on a piece of paper what you think you can achieve. And once I do that, that's why I say I write 5 million down at the top. I will work out how I can break backwards rather than forwards. How can I work backwards to get in this in? So, if I'm like, okay, an average garden contract for 20 sites is 200 grand. Okay, I need this many. If I know I paint a house in a prime house in London, it's an average of 7.5 grand for 2 bed or whatever it is. I need this many, and it's just about working out how you can tick it off without overstretching your time, because obviously that you can only work a certain amount of hours a week. Do this, so you might work out that once you calculated it, you can't hit 5 million because it's impossible for the amount of time that you've actually got. So it's about kind of being realistic.
I think that's great, because I think a lot of guys, some construction guys that I speak to, it's telephone numbers, because they're just talking about contracts and revenue, and I want to know about profit. Okay, so when they say, "Oh, we just won this, we won this job, it's worth X amount. Oh, it's 1.3 million this one. Okay, well, what's your profit on it?" And it's similar with the sales, right? You're just saying stuff, right? Unless that transfer comes through, it doesn't actually mean anything. What would you say are the KPIs, the metrics that you would say bare minimum you need to track to keep you sane, to keep your ego in check, and also to know where you're at?
So for me, biggest one for startups is your daily expenditures. Why are you getting PCNs in London when you can get pro-trade parking permits? Why, or you can hire a parking space other than Kensington and Chelsea. Why are you using Victoria Plumbing when if you told the customer you could start next Tuesday, you could use a cheaper supplier? Why are you using people like, I don't know, let's say Lyrico for your toilet roll when Bryson is cheaper? Why are you, do you know what I mean? There's so many things. I'm like, okay, because a bit like what you said there, I hear so many people say, I've converted this massive job. Great. What's the margin? 15%. Well, you might as well have got a half the size job. That would have been half the time. And you made 35% margin. So exactly what you were saying there, the time for the job and the time to prioritize, people are like, oh, I've just done a tender. What's it for? I'm looking after 10 toilets, yearly in Hackney, but I'm only making, 1,000 of it, but it's costing me 16,000 a month. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what on earth are you doing? You need to really rein it back and be like, hey, what am I actually good at? Good. Is this service for me? Sometimes I think people get given an opportunity and the money makes them turn rather than the profit margin. A lot of people don't want to do certain jobs. So why are you doing them if it's not something that's going to benefit you, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. So in terms of sales, and just to give you an idea, we probably track how many calls we make, how many of them kind of like became conversation, and then also how many discovery calls were booked, how many then turned into a sale, that kind of thing. What would you say in terms of sales? What metrics would you, and it might not be calls, it could be emails, it could be.
So for me is um, number of new clients contacted versus number of replies versus meetings booked versus first active work order. And I find a bit like what I was saying before, it's all good booking hundreds of meetings or whatever, but you want to book that solid 20, solid 30 a month with good clients rather than just any Tom, Dick and Harry, or just by spending, loads on Google ads to try to get your name out there pretty much. And also for me, the amount of time that your customer hasn't been contacted for. So, like how you're saying that, you track the calls and stuff like this. If how long was it before you class the customer as inactive? So some people would say three
I see.
months, 1 month, two. I start to pull it as a month, because after a month, it's very rare. Even with friends, you'll find once you've spoken to when you're good friends for a month, that time can then turn into a year really quickly. And I find, but if you rekindle that after a month, the friendship just continues, and then it might be even just a monthly conversation that that you're going to have with each other, but it's just that same aspect and same friendship, same relationship building of not becoming inactive or realizing that Sophie, who you worked with for 4 years, have left, and what you didn't know. I find this happens all the
Yeah.
time. Oh yeah, thingy, they left and we didn't know. So how, when you're speaking to that new person, how active does it sound like you was with them at all? If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Um, a sort of pushback I hear a lot is, I don't want to annoy them, right? Oh, I don't want to bother them. What do you say to that?
You can, of course, you can stress the life out of people, consistently contacting them, but it's more about contacting them for something new or an offering. So obviously, if you're chasing a quote, that has to be done because this is what pays the bills. I'd say never feel bad about chasing a quote. Or do you remember when we spoke last Tuesday? You said you had that bathroom fit out job. Is that still around? I would still chase that just like a new inquiry email. Okay, even if it is just said off a tongue, because for me that's potential business that could be there. If it's to do with hi Arthur, I called you yesterday. Are you still not looking for contractors? Of course, that's going to be crazy. Or work out when is their new onboarding period. When or maybe speak to them about something else. Oh, by the way, just so you know, we do EICR certificates. I'm not sure if I mentioned that last time. I'm not sure. We do actually do landscaping as well. I'm not sure if you know about that, but I thought I'll just pop that in there for you. Telling someone something new is never bad, as long as done in the correct way and respectful. But yeah, calling someone every day, don't do.
Yeah, yeah. There can be too much, definitely. There can be too much. What nowadays, and I think we already touched on this because you said, people aren't hitting the phones as much. Nowadays, I think people can hide behind social media as their, oh yeah, I'm doing outreach. I'm getting my name out there. I'm just taking some photos and uploading it, and putting some hashtags on there, whatever. But there is value in social media, right? There is value in all those things. What's the balance? We've got so many different methods nowadays. What would you say is the
I say
balance?
80-20 in the office to social media.
When you say in the office, what do you mean by in the office?
Productive work on the phones, hitting the emails, cold calling, cold emailing, attending networking events, that's that sort of thing. Doing pop-ins, if you're walking past 10 estate agents on your way home, why haven't you gone in there? You dream about speaking to them on the phone, but you just walk past them. And I find I
Yeah.
find this is a real big thing. In England many years ago, people would do that a lot more. Pop in. No, are you looking for this? No, cool, fine, cheers, bye. Whereas it's the same with this. You can walk into any estate agents, they have to greet you, they have to do this, and all it takes is that person to catch an eye, and the conversation starts, which might have taken you 5 hours on the phone, 5 months via email. And social media, you can't put yourself in front of someone. You can't make somebody respond to you. Whereas if they answer the phone, if you're standing in front of them, they have to respond. Where you can create all these beautiful posts on social media, spend loads on, Google ads and all this, and no one's going to buy. But, you yourself with your charm and your knowledge, walking around as the product, that's what sells.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say, having worked in various different areas, tech businesses, particularly, everyone is leaning towards the email, social media. Essentially, what can I do to avoid a no?
Yes.
What can I do to avoid having that direct contact? And I actually think, and I remember when I grew up, people would knock on my door. I'd be a kid, open the door, and it'd be a guy like trying to sell double
Yeah.
glazing or whatever. And people were probably craving some real human interaction instead of just being bombarded with these, sort of highly doctored and like highly well thought out emails and everything's clinical and things like that. So I would also say, get yourself out there. It's something that people are actually, believe it or not, and in the future, people are going to be craving for it. I actually just want someone to speak to me. I don't want to be talking to a chatbot. And then, even when I'm on the phone, it's an AI voice. And even when I try to, email them, the response is some
Yes.
AI response.
Yeah, and I
So
find, going back to what you said about how to use social media, and I say the two. So, I would always do things like free trainings, which, I would create, like a beautiful, like, social media post, something, put it on Eventbrite. It could be, I don't know, free. What was the last one we did? We did a free event on damp and mold for property managers. Left it up there. Didn't contact nobody. 40 directors sign up. I used to do this as well for GDPR, just little things like this, a bit like what you're saying now. People want to speak to somebody. People like to join webinars. I find COVID secretly found this out in the same way, where everyone was avoiding the social media stuff, but wanted to come together online. And I feel like, a bit like what you're saying, like human interaction, whatever it is, people will crave it. I feel like that. And just speaking to somebody or speaking to somebody new, and maybe not having to even, oh, are you free to come to my office for this event? Or, just giving them the option of tuning in anywhere, but then also mixing the two together, I find really, really rewarding and also cost effective for the business, because it doesn't really cost you much to do it. Just your hours of your time and your expertise. And then, the inquiries that can come from that can be, very well. And it's something that you can, start to build a series of, just like yourself, you can start to, do some sort of aspects of training people to build your customer base, which I feel like is the modern way of doing things, and a perfect way, should I say. I feel like it's a great way of meeting new people, new customers, without having to do the hard sell. So you're just selling your expertise.
yeah. And how do you recommend going about getting referrals as opposed to, the completely new prospect? How do you get referrals from current clients?
So if it's a B2B customer, you need to find out if they do newsletters. You need to find out if they do any company events. You need to find out if they do any mail shots where you could be a part of. So, like getting involved with a client's database is priceless. Yeah. So, if you're able to get them to, include you on something that says, I've worked with Arthur, he's amazing. Guys, go use him. Would it be a Christmas letter or whatever it is? I find these a great way to get referrals, and people don't ask these sort of questions. Most companies like to do a newsletter, Christmas letter, or, something like this. And it's about how can you be a part of it? And companies like to know that people want to be a part of their ethos, their vision. And, I feel like you can really feed into this. I did this with quite a few companies, and I found it, extremely rewarding. Even like example, 2 years ago we did SRM. We did the Christmas giveaway. Um, get your garden tidied up over Christmas. And just saying that the company has worked with you. So we work with Titan, we work with whatever. Is the vouch, is the referral, if they trust that brand, they now trust you. And I find
Yeah.
that's a real common way to pick up customers. Same way they will do it with sports, as you were saying. They post this unknown brand you've never heard of across the whole, and by the end of the year, everyone's got it on their tongue. And I find that's the same way with whatever you do with referrals. People always think referrals are just a testimonial, and or you know or I'll give you 50 quid if your mate wants his room decorated or something like this. And it should be bigger than that. It should be, what are they doing that can be including you? And that's a referral.
Great. That's great. Um, I think we could go deeper into this, and I do want to. There are some other topics I want to explore. Um, are there any things that you think are just so important for people to know construction trades when it comes to sales that you wanna give them?
So for me, it'll be know your competitors' pricing, know the areas where the pricing changes. Because obviously, depending on, if basing on London, if you do something in Mayfair, you do something in Tooting, or you do something in Walthamstow, the prices are going to change dramatically of what people are expecting to pay. So it's first about knowing your market, knowing where your expenditures are, and then knowing where you could be potentially hit with flaws or problems. So, if you're taking on jobs where your engineer's not that great, but I'm going to send Harry anyway. Okay. For me, all these things convert to the sale because, we only get paid at the end of the job. So, you have to make sure it's all good winning the customer. It's all good selling the dream. It's all good doing all that. But if you haven't got the actual person to deliver, which for me is just as important as the first meeting, saying, we do have engineers, we do have this, but we specialize in this, and this, rather than, oh yeah, we're doing HRUs. Yeah, cool. We can do every type of unit without seeing it. We'll just turn up on site and fix away. And it just doesn't work like that. And I feel like that's a real key thing to do. Also, knowing how you're growing. So if you are new, things can seem so great, loads of jobs coming through. I'm working every day. I'm here, there, and there. You need to know how much money you've made. You really need to know how much you're actually making, because you get into this role of just having loads of debts and loads of jobs, and you're floating through this. And I find companies can do this for many, many years. Just hoping that the accountant in their monthly meetings is gonna, hopefully give them some good news, or, say how they can get around this one or this one, when really they should have stopped, rethinked, and gone again, rather than just been like, okay, I'm just gonna go from now until the end, into jobs, out of jobs, and really be like, okay, how much am I actually making from this? How much of my time is being taken up, and is it worth it? Know your value.
Well, that is very true. It's something that we preach a lot. Just not having that same year every year, and we do recognize as well, it's sometimes difficult to take a step back, and you get stuck in the moment, and you don't have time to actually sit down and think about these things. Thanks a lot, Ben. That was really, really useful. I think that's going to be so useful for people, because as I've said, I'm sure sales is such an overlooked and under emphasized part of a lot of construction and trades, and it is something that they need to think about. I think we'd love to have you back
Lovely.
on. I've already got some ideas in
Great.
my head of how we can do that. But how can people reach you if they want to know more? If they want to know more about you, give us some ways to
Yeah,
contact
guys.
you?
So always feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn. Happy to help always. I'm hoping to be presenting at some more events over the next couple of months anyway. And then yeah, Instagram, I am Benjamin. And then yeah, try and find me.
Okay, great. We'll put the links below.